How are you?
I'm so good. I love your background. It's very like moody.
Oh, thanks.
I'm also like eating right now because I went on a 6 mile hike this morning because I was like, I feel like I can make it back in time. So I have like my edamame here and mangoes. By the
I
way, if
love
you
it.
never
Wow,
had
six
like,
miles. That
what is
is
that?
6 miles. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was actually like 6.24. And so like I'm like dead, but like still
Oh my.
alive.
Well, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're here. We have people coming in. But I saw your video the other day, and then immediately after that video, I was like, let's do a live together. I want to talk about that. And then I binge watched all of your stuff last night. You probably saw me liking
I
like
saw
stuff
that. I was like, okay, she's
for
doing
like an
her
hour and a half. I was
research.
liking stuff.
I feel like a good host, because I don't know if you watch Hot Ones with Sean, whatever his name is, but like he's like so
Mm.
researched about all his guests, and so he like asks very like nuanced questions, which is like really interesting. So I like
Well, I
that.
think you have I love the type of content that you do. The one video I saw got me right away, but then when I was going through last night, I was like, this is exactly the type of stuff that I love. So I actually did write down, I know I told you we're just going to be casual, but I did write down a couple questions just because I legitimately had questions from everything that I was seeing.
I love that. You're so prepared. I'm not prepared for any of this, but
Oh,
so I'm
don't
gonna
worry.
wing
Don't
it.
worry. You just get your strength back from your hike.
Yeah, no, I'm energized. I'm good. But yeah, shoot away. Oh,
Awesome. So I did see the first video that I saw from you was the one about, which I thought this was like, which is also the reason that I wanted to have you on because I know a lot of the people that are watching my stuff. It's normal to get interested in channeling because there's so many amazing messages that we hear that are channeled. But I think people don't really realize that there's also a lot of other stuff that comes with channeling. And I really loved what you talked about because they do like a lot of times other types of beings or whatever will use flattery, and that's what your video was about. And I think you called it the Jafar effect,
yeah.
which is, I love that you coined that. That's perfect.
Which I love. First of all, like I love Jafar. Like in secret, like sometimes I'm just like I wish I could be like Jafar, but it's dangerous. It is dangerous. So, and so if you also Dr. Gilbert, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's
No.
like he's on Gaia. He does. I think he like worked for NASA, or no, he wasn't. Isn't NASA? He was like an engineer, like in the military, that like did like bombing or something. But like super intelligent, one of the smartest people that I've ever been able to like learn from, experience. And I have his class coming up, which is like biogeometry, and so he talks about it too. He talks about like early on when you begin your spiritual journey, that's when these beings come to you
Mhm.
and they'll tell you things that you want to hear. And, you know, when you're opened up to this and you're like, we're all one and we're all powerful, which is absolutely true, that's where you fall into the trap. And
Yeah.
it's like, you know, you see a lot of people on this app who have gone through that. They're like, you know, I went through psychosis. It was so tough. It was really hard to get out of. And that's where it begins. It begins in like your early stages when you're very vulnerable and very like
Mhm.
naive to what's out there. So I don't think enough people talk about it. The first time I talked about it, it was like maybe like 6, 8 months ago. And I almost got like canceled for it because I probably said it like a little bit too harshly, you know,
No, but I
like the
think also people are
delusions.
triggered. Like people are really quick on this app to not accept opinions that don't resonate with them or maybe trigger them, and like would rather attack the person than ask themselves basic question of like, hmm, I feel concerned when I hear about this. Maybe I should look into the channeling that I'm doing and maybe try to, make sure that I'm channeling who I think I'm channeling.
Absolutely. I also feel like there are people who are like more advanced and then like all of a sudden like their content will start to shift. And then they'll start to like look tired. I'm just like, are you okay? Like what's happening? What's going on? They'll start to like say like weirder and weirder things. So I don't even think it's like just for new people. I feel
Yeah.
like at any stage you can kind of like fall into the state, which is, it's like
And I
you
feel like
have to
it's
be on
always connected
always.
to flattery, because I do know someone personally who went through the same thing. Actually, a couple people. I'm lucky that I do have, people outside of the TikTok world that are all into this stuff too. But, you do see the other side of it in real life, which people aren't showing online. And I do know people that have had that happen. And, it always starts with the flattery. And they know that it's going to work for the human ego if you tell them that and we're all special. However, there's something about some type of godlike creature telling you that you're special that really can kind of, which is why I love what you said in your video, which was they told you that you were like the god of the dragons, and you're like, I'm going to keep this to myself, and I'm also going to like not let this affect my life, because a lot of people, you're right, they just start looking really different and you can tell something's going on.
Yeah, it's super sad. And yeah, it's so funny to meet like spiritual people in like real life and offline, because I feel like online everybody has like this edge to them, and a lot of our stuff is very like we try to be as authentic as possible, but there's also times where we're like, oh my gosh, like I know like we're gonna hit a button if we say this, so just avoid it. But in real life, it's just like people are just like saying all these things. It's like, oh my gosh, you would have said that on TikTok, like you'd be dead like tomorrow,
It's so
and
true.
it's so funny. Yeah,
It is true.
we're
It's nice
just
to see people being like their full selves, which we don't get to see online.
we're just a lot more lenient when it comes to like the real world and like real connection. And when we're online, there's a little bit of that wall that like um a disattachment there where it's like I can say whatever I want to you and you have to deal with it because you're online saying stuff. So
I
I don't
know.
know,
It's really
it's really different.
crazy. And I feel like we see so much of that. Like, I don't know if it's a little bit worse right now, or maybe I'm just seeing it more, but like the tearing people down is really a lot. I just honestly, if someone makes a stitch about someone else, I don't care if they're right or wrong, I block them. Like, I don't care. I'm so tired of, like, it's one thing you stitch someone and add information or do it in a positive way. But honestly, everyone trying to undermine everyone else, even if the original creator was wrong, I'm like, and then you are going to call yourself a healer when your whole platform is talking shit about people. Who wants to be healed by that person? Heal
For
yourself.
I feel that I used to respond to comments, but I stopped because I was like, I can't respond to those negative comments because it's like nobody ever listens. Like nobody's. That's the other thing is like nobody is here to like change their mind. Everybody has just a set opinion, especially in the spiritual like realm, which is like the one place where you need to be forever a student, right? And unfortunately, a lot of people within the space like believe they know it all. Like they're just like, I'm done and I've had enough. But like I'll tell you, like I feel like I know like a lot because I've done so much, but like I know nothing. Like I know like maybe like 0.1% of like what's going on out there.
Exactly. Even as a human on Earth, we can really only know like 1% of what's going on, because our brain can't even handle the full concept of what's really happening.
Exactly. Especially when people talk about dimensions, like sure, like I'll talk about it because like I'll get like the information about it, but like nobody even understands like even like a dumbed down version of
Exactly.
dimensions. Maybe like astrophysicists are probably like the closest to understanding it, but like
And
nobody
to
in the
be honest,
spiritual
I feel like
community.
they don't either, because they're
No.
missing a part of an important part, which is the consciousness.
Bingo. That's the gap with what they used to have in ancient Egypt. Whereas like science, the metaphysics and spirituality were one. Now it's like we see them as polar opposites, but they really do need to work in tandem.
It's true. And so I'm doing my dimension series right now. I kind of didn't want to do it, but I've been led to do it.
Oh my
And
gosh.
but
Okay, I did not know that you were doing a dimension series. I'm sure you're gonna do it like a lot of justice.
But the first the first parts I talked about how every single model is wrong. So what we're going to do is explore all the models, and at the end of the series really see what matched up between all of these different models, because we have them in science, in math, in spirituality, we have it in kind of all these in between places. So that's what I'm doing, is I'm kind of breaking down uh all of these different models of how people have broken the dimensions down, and densities and levels of consciousness, because a lot of times they're like overlapping information. And the same thing too, people use dimension for a lot of different things. Sometimes people will use a parallel timeline as another dimension, but that's technically the same dimension but a different
Right.
timeline. So really trying to just kind of go over all the information, and then at the end of the series, and also too, I started the series that saying that like I'm a student in this. So we're going to go through this whole process. And at the end, let's figure out what matched up between the science and the math and the consciousness and all of these different channeled books. So I'm excited about it. But most of the other content that I've created before that is stuff that I've known for a long time. So I've had a little bit more it's been a little harder to make these videos, because it's actually like a lot of it is oh cute.
Thank you.
um a lot of it is I don't know the answer.
Where
So
walk me, because you have like such like studied content that just like almost feels like truth and fact. So like walk me through your process of like creating a video and like doing the research. Like how does that come about for you? Because it's so
so
good.
I'm thank you. And I mostly do series. That's kind of, I don't know why that's been the way, because I mean 3 minutes is just not enough to do anything. Um, so and basically when I first started TikTok, I had done the Apocalypse series, and I don't do any type of readings for people, but I access the Akashic records for myself. And for like friends when it's needed. But so what I actually do is I ask the records what needs to be in the series, and they give me a list. And the list for the Dimension series is so long that it stresses me out. Like it's so long. I That's also the Alien series that I did. They gave me such a long list, which is why it's like 40 parts. So they basically just tell me what needs to be included, and then most of it is stuff that I've come across, and they kind of like let me know, like, okay, that show on Gaia that you saw, that episode, okay, this person's name that you saw. So it's a lot of times not people that are completely brand new to me. It's information that I've come across, and they just
Mm.
remind me of like, okay, you saw the information here, you saw the information here, you saw the information here. And then I write it all down, and I have a list on my wall that I'm working through. So that's the
Wow.
process. And they also told me that I'm not allowed to post anything that is not uplifting or empowering to the viewer. So there is sometimes information in those things that is a little interesting or scary or polarizing, but I actually have to leave those parts out.
I love what you do. So
Oh, thank
I am
you.
probably the opposite, where it's like, oh, post something mean today. Post something like
I've
emotional.
never seen that. I binged all of your stuff. There wasn't a single thing that wasn't filled with love.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It's just me being fake online. I'm just kidding. Um, oh my gosh. Okay, so what else is on your list? What other questions do you have?
So I actually have quite a few things for you. So your pinned video is, and I really thought this was interesting because I've kind of heard people, part of it I haven't heard other people talk about, and part of it I've heard vaguely talked about and I haven't fully understood. So your video that most people will have one chakra that kind of rules the whole body and like is kind of their driving force, which I don't hear many people talking about. And then the portal part, the opening portals thing. And now that I've heard so many things. People say like, "Oh, I accidentally opened a portal in my house," and I want to understand that a little bit better.
Yeah. So all of this came about like in my sessions, like especially when I was doing energy healing on people, and they would have like a lot of issues with like things coming through or whatever, and I would just see these like portals in specific parts of their body, and generally your kind of like main chakra, like your most powerful one, is also like where you also have like the most like ailments as well. It's just because like you have so much energy moving through this space. And the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I kept seeing it and seeing it and seeing it on different people. And it was totally aligned to like what they were able to do, where I was just like, oh my gosh, like your throat is like, it's almost like you can connect with people. And she's like, yeah, like I'm telepathic. Like my mom will know what I'm thinking because like I'll talk to her. So that's how that came about, where it's just like, oh, there's like one or two chakras that are really powerful within people, and a lot of times it's tied to your like what's going on in your life, and a lot of times that's like your clair abilities. So like your throat, like you might be like more clairaudient than others. A lot of people will have like a really powerful sacral, and that will like really be tied to them. They're like really involved in a lot of like I guess like sexual healing. A lot of women go through that or like have a lot of trauma within that. And then that also ties to the portals, because your most powerful chakra is also going to be the place where you're going to have the most bandwidth for energy to come through. And because of that, you're able to create portals through it. And it's just all kind of like tied to that. So mine specifically was kind of like my throat and my heart were kind of like the two that, I would feel the most. And so, just a lot of testing, a lot of seeing, a lot of asking, and then the thing about like all of this is like, once you can repeat it like 10 or 15 times, and you're like, okay, they can get confident enough to like talk about this as like semi truth. But
Wow.
yeah, that's kind of how it came about, just like session after session.
And that's so interesting that you said that a lot of times can be the one that they tend to have issues with too, which is really interesting, because I think a lot of times you wouldn't think that if that's the one that rules your body, you might think that it's more maybe clear or opened or active, but actually too, you also could be having to work through the issues in that part of the body to really make it as powerful as it needs to be.
Yeah, energy isn't different. Energy comes in all forms. And if all of it's coming through one spot, you're going to get the good with the bad, for sure.
And so what about the portal thing? So what would happen like if you opened a portal inside of your body? Does that portal, like if you go to the store, you take that portal to the store with you?
Yeah, so the portal within your body, if it's living within your body or if you're opening it in your home, I guess it's where it's kind of like projected out of. But if it's staying within your body, it's moving along with you. It's allowing energy to go in, go out, and it depends on like what frequency it's resonating at. So, if you're resonating, so the frequency is something that's very specific to channeling as well. Like if I'm trying to connect to like aliens or something like that, I need to go like way high. I need to connect to humans, I need to drop down way low. So the same goes for portals like in your body, right? So if you like get really scared and like you open the portal accidentally within yourself, you're watching a scary movie, you're going to invite some kind of like not so nice things into your home and things like that until the energy like shifts or dissipates or like closes. So yeah, if it's in your body, it can follow you around. If it projects out of your body, it can kind of like stay there for a while. But usually if it's projected out of your body, a lot of times like it'll probably like naturally close after a while, after it loses its energy.
Wow. And then so that would be, and I guess like anything, it can kind of go either way, where you could be pulling good things, like maybe information through the portal, or maybe you could be pulling lower things through it, like maybe fears or maybe entities or something. Is it like pulling anything through?
Yeah, like honestly, like anything that can align to the energy with the portal can come through. It's,
So anything, the
it's
frequency of that portal can match
yeah.
and come through. Wow.
Yeah. And that's kind of like an astral projection kind of what do you call it? It's kind of an astral projection principle around that, and like how you can like move into different energy bodies through the astral. And it's all about just like shifting your frequency, and anybody can do it. Even the most evil, darkest of beings can manipulate their frequency as well. It's not difficult.
And someone asked, how would you close a portal if you did open one in your body or had one open and didn't know?
Yeah, I mean, you can intentionally close it. And when you do that, like, you definitely want to, you can visualize it. You can also do like hand movements because we carry energy within our body. And then just like, really like visualize it closing and then visualize like nothing entering or exiting. And so also like a part of that is, so the thing about like this is like, so I was in AmeriCorps, and like I taught like preschool age kids for a little while. And the big thing that I kind of like learned was like, every child needs something completely different depending on what's going on. I had children with parents going through divorce, kids with like parents in jail. So they need something different. And so when it comes to like what you are trying to do to close a portal, like understand like where your power is, whether it's like vocally is where you feel like very powerful or magical, or whether you feel like feeling that portal closing is going to be powerful for you. So, and that's the thing as like teachers and mentors, like we teach like how we did it, but what we should really be doing is adapting to how like our student is really suited to like close a portal or do these things.
Wow, I love that answer. And that's such a good answer because you're right. There's people who are going to have different skills. Some people are really good at visualizing, so maybe visualizing would be the way for them to do it, but exactly, some people are more vocal or some people are more heart driven. So maybe they're going to cloak the portal with their heart energy and close it. That's
Yeah.
really good. That's like
I think the big
that's a great way of telling people how to do things is actually kind of lean into their own skill already.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like you can't like be in a place of ambivalence of like, did I close it? What happened? Do the test. Do a test. Ancient Egypt was actually really big on what pendulums. I'm like really
Mhm.
struggling with vocabulary today.
Well, you had
So
a really
test it.
a long hike today, so
Vibrationally test like, is it closed? Did it happen? Did it work? And that's how you can also get to know like more about your skills, more about your energy, is really, really getting confirmation and knowing. I think that's also a big thing in the spiritual community is like people are like, well, I did this healing, but I don't think I'm healed, or like I'm manifesting every single day. Why is it not coming true? It's not coming true because you're manifesting it every single day. You know what I mean? Because you don't believe that it's gonna happen.
yeah, so I had done a video in my Earth Shift series about doubt timelines and how because doubt is a very intense emotion. Doubt is like you could be feeling great and doubt hits so hard. And I think people forget that doubt is like an emotion that you have, and part of manifesting also includes emotion, which is why, a lot of times, people manifesting things out of fear, a lot of times manifest the opposite of what they want. And so it's interesting that's like basically aligning with what you're saying is that, if you're kind of doubting it, you're like kind of creating the reality of the doubt because the doubt also has intense energy around it.
Exactly. Doubt is very powerful. Spot on. Spot on. Practice what you preach. This is
And
also a big
exactly
thing.
too, it's like having faith and belief in something is also just as powerful. Um, and then the thing that was in that video, it was actually from a woman, Marina Jacobi's work, and she talked about how sometimes you could be manifesting one timeline, but then you have a doubt timeline, and you're kind of believing both. So what's happening is you're kind of shifting between both. So sometimes you feel like you're there, and sometimes you feel like you're not, and you actually are kind of bouncing between two realities where you have it and you don't have it.
That is so interesting. I think manifestation is very fascinating. I try not to manifest because I'm just like, just give me what you're going to give me. But I feel like I've gotten really good at it, which is like kind of like a scary cheat code. Like Oprah talks about being a master manifester, but if you like really understand or are able to do it unconsciously, like it's honestly insane. I don't know what your experience with manifestation is, but it's like kind of crazy.
I'm a big believer of manifestation. For me, the big thing that I had to get over was lack mentality,
Mm.
because, and that was something definitely, that's a part of everyone's spiritual journey. And there's definitely times, over the last few years when I really made the commitment to fully be like, I know everything is working exactly the way it needs to. And even if in front of me it doesn't look like it at the moment, I know that this is working towards what I need. And when I really did that, I do feel the stuff come right when and I feel like the universe likes to wait to the last minute for me because of the lack mentality that I've worked on. So like
Hmm.
the universe will go to the last minute, right when the bills due the day before. Like the universe pushes me to the last minute because it wants to, like, I believe, make sure that like I really have, and I'm not going to give into the doubt. I'm not going to give into the lack. So they really do push me. It doesn't come like right away. It like comes last minute, at the last possible
I
minute
feel
it comes.
that. I feel like the universe waits for you to put yourself in a vulnerable position, and then they're like, and then you can't fall into the state of despair when you're vulnerable and everything's going wrong. Just be like, okay, like I'm good, I'm happy, whatever. Not to bypass anything, but just like, you know what I mean. And then you get it, and you're like, wow, like why didn't I do
And I
this
think that
sooner?
when you say not bypassing, it's like there's so much talk about the spiritual bypassing. I feel like, yes, it's obviously an issue, but no one bypasses. So I don't think it needs to be as much of a focus as it is on TikTok. Like I see more videos about spiritual bypassing than spiritual knowledge or information. And I'm like, okay, guys, we get it. Nobody gets to nobody gets to do it easy, but everyone finds out. Like
I I agree. There are probably too many videos on spiritual bypassing. I do think I do think it's an important topic when it comes to like accountability. Basically, it's like, are you able to keep yourself accountable? If yes,
Mhm.
then like you're fine. Um, but I do think that there is a lot of more opportunity for unity and growth. Because I was talking about this with a friend, and I was like, like the KKK and the Proud Boys, what they have is like unity, which brings them so much power. And
And
there's
so,
no
like a
unity.
group, any group that's harming people, even like a gang or the mob or
They have a
secret
common goal and they're
secret
aligned
groups.
on it.
Yeah, there's community, and so it goes to show that how important that is. And it does seem like so like everyone's kind of trying to, or not everyone, but I don't know, my For You page, I don't know why it continues to hit me with these things the last few days, and I'm like, okay, I am done with all of this. But you're right. It's a lot of people kind of trying to separate themselves, maybe because it's their spiritual business and they want to separate themselves from competitors. But at the end of the day, those separation is like kind of against what they're preaching.
I think that is probably like the biggest issue is that, you know, as spiritual creators in a capitalistic world, like we have to like do this to like feed ourselves, to like have a roof over our heads, and that puts people into some morality situations of like ethics and like what am I doing, like am I really like teaching and here to like uplift, or am I just trying to like gain some more clients so I can make more
Yeah.
money? So
And exactly,
it's
a lot of times it's coming from maybe a place of fear or something. I have a very weird thing that I'm working through with that because all of the information that I give, I believe information should be free. And I think part of the reason the world's in the place that we're in is because information has been left only for the people who can afford it. So I don't at this point do anything that is any type, and also as far as like the things that I do, which is like I do access the Akashic records, but I don't do that for a business. And then the same thing too with I do know how to do Dolores Cannon's QHHT hypnosis, but I've only done it and do it for people that I know personally. So I kind of feel like with this journey that I've been having, of really end up being like some type of spiritual TikToker, which happened out of nowhere. I feel like the confirmation that I've been getting is like, keep going, keep paying into the collective. It's okay. Don't worry. The money will come for your bills through miracles, and they have, because it doesn't come through TikTok or any of the things like that.
Yeah.
And it'll literally fall out of the sky. Like, I had someone who I knew from like 20 years ago, just like send me a gift that I haven't talked to them in all these years, because I guess they saw what I'm doing and they're like, you know what, I want to support you. So
Wow.
it does come through. But so I think that's kind of, and then just yesterday I pulled a card, and the information was like, you're not taking the quick fixes. You're looking for the long term. So don't give in to the quick fixes. And I'm like, okay, yes, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing and paying into the collective. And that's where I'm really at. And that's where I feel like the universe, like I said earlier, is kind of like pushing me with my former lack mentality. Now they're really like, do all this work for free. Keep doing it for free. And I'm like, okay, I have bills.
Well,
I
I
have
think,
to.
yeah, that's the thing. That's another big manifestation topic. Like, are you giving as much as you're receiving? The more you give, the more you receive. And like your free knowledge, not making money off of like people coming through, I think that adds to so much like authenticity, like genuine energy. And I really feel that come through in your videos.
Aw,
So
thank
I'm
you.
glad you have those like angelic gifts coming through from like random friends, and like
Insane.
you're able to do the work,
It
because
is.
a lot
And
of
I try not to get
people
scared. I try not to
is
get worried.
yeah, like you got this. um yeah, because the world, I mean, I think there's a lot of people who like start and then they don't like get clients or whatever, and then they go back to like working their 9 to 5. I just quit my 9 to 5 like in April, and it was just like so crazy because I was working like, I would work, my job from like 9 to 5 or whatever, and then I would do like sessions until like 10 o'clock, and I was like dead. So now I'm like on sabbatical right now, like I'm not doing anything, which is like really
That's so neat.
nice.
That
Yeah.
really helped me. I quit my regular job in April of 2021. And I had really been working obsessively because I had a lot of issues around money growing up. So I was afraid to even take off. And I would like
Oh
save
wow.
money. Like, I was so afraid to like even like call out of a shift. And I'm like, what if I end up homeless? If I'm homeless, someone might do something to me. Like, so I was like, really, I had a lot of issues around money. And I'm not saying I'm completely healed from it, but I'm definitely being put in these positions. So it's been now about a year and a half that I haven't had a regular job, and I was living off of my savings. By miracles, I still have savings because I'm telling you, the universe at that very last minute comes through. Um, but it's definitely like, if I didn't have that time to kind of do nothing for a minute, I don't think I
Mhm.
could have like got over some of those things that were lingering, because when you're working and people are kind of taking your energy at work, it's just like you can't, like, I feel like your body can't even decompress fully to deal with the things that need to be dealt with. So I'm so glad you're on a sabbatical. It's amazing. And I feel like it makes a lot of other things work, right? Like, do you feel like a lot of other things fall into place because you're at that like comfort of not having to go into a job?
Yeah, no, I was the same. Like I grew up like really poor. Like my family was like on food stamps. I had like 3 outfits to wear, and so like my mentality was always like get promoted, grow, like whatever, until I was like making very like comfortable amount of money. And so that was the hard part, is like leaving security for the first time in my life. And I will say like, at first I was like, okay, I'm just like living off of like the sale of my house or whatever. I like cashed out my 401k because I was like, I'm not gonna retire, like I'm probably gonna die, so it's probably fine. And so that's what I was living off of. But then like other things just started to like
Mhm.
click. And so now I'm back into a phase of like learning, which is I'm super excited about. I probably would never have been able to get back into learning. And a big thing for me now is like traveling to these ancient sites. So if you kind of like
Ooh.
do a lot of reading, like you'll see like a lot of the greats, like they go to these places and they receive messages, downloads. There's a really famous story of whoever, I forget his name, going to South America, and Toth coming to them and telling them to take the emerald tablets and bringing them all the way back to the pyramids of Giza, showing him like the secret way back into the pyramids and restoring them back to there. And so like that's kind of like I've kind of like moved away a little bit from like the alien thing that I'm like most known for into kind of like understanding like ancient Earth, which I think is like so fascinating. So this is kind of like a long turnabout thing of like the abundance and free time and the ability to like give up and let go of something so great. Like I'll be completely honest, like with my bonuses, I was probably making over 200K a year, which is like really scary to leave that to making like nothing. Like honestly, like in my business, I maybe make like $1,000 a month, which is like nothing. And it's just like and that's the thing is like putting yourself in a vulnerable place. And now what I have, the gift is the gift of time to actually enjoy Earth, to
Mhm.
enjoy like being out in like the ocean, spending time with people you care about. And I'm really kind of like rebuilding like this human connection sphere.
Yeah.
And when I was working 80 hours a week, still like channeling and doing all that stuff, like I didn't have any of that. Like it was very isolating.
And I also too with what you're saying about kind of going more towards the ancient stuff. I feel like, you know what, you're going to really connect it all to all of the alien stuff you already knew, and I feel like it's more like filling in the picture because of course everything's connected. So it's good to kind of also be willing to, even if people kind of know you for that, to explore other
Yeah.
things and not get like stuck as being just that way because that's what people are looking for.
Yeah, people evolve with us. I think that's the other thing is like a lot of people are like, oh, if you talk about like aliens like building the pyramids, that's like racist or whatever. There's a whole thing around like starseeds and racism or whatever.
And
And I
that's a
was like,
very TikTok concept because I was trying to explain it to my friend at dinner because I
yeah,
saw all these TikToks about it. And then my friend who's not on TikTok, I was trying to tell her about it at dinner. And she's Caribbean herself. And she's like, but why? And she kept like trying to like get me to explain it. And I was like, you're
yeah.
right. The real world off of TikTok, this sounds ridiculous.
I mean, and I think that's the thing is like people are so like caught up in like these really kind of like archaic forms of thinking that like make a comment like that like racist. Well, that doesn't take away of like what actually happened, which is like what is the actual truth. Are you saying it's just like racist to talk about it, or are you saying that there's no possible way that it happened, right? Because if
That's
you
true.
go,
That
so
didn't
like,
really get addressed in that conversation. They only talk about that one guy's book.
yeah,
Nobody's read that guy's book. Nobody that's into this has ever seen that book in person or online. Like literally the one book that they all reference, nobody's read it. Like and it's crazy because also too on that topic, they talk about eugenics a lot. Oh, I think you might have a phone call coming in. Oh, there you go. Well,
okay, I had a phone call coming in, but then it's back now, and I accidentally muted somebody, so I'm sorry. There's a snake in my boot. I accidentally muted you. Hopefully, that doesn't do anything, but I didn't mean to. So sorry, I didn't hear you. Please repeat yourself.
yeah, so that like a lot of times people will talk about like how that one book, and I don't know, I haven't read the book because like I said, really no one that's into this stuff has read that book. I've never heard of it. And I'm someone who literally reads all of those books, like crazy books that are like the old spiritual books. I've never come across it, never heard of it. But um it's also like to say that there's actually a lot of things in our world that were created by people who believed in eugenics. And there's a lot of things outside of aliens. And that's just because the world was in a horrible place. Like the history of the world is horrible, like not the
It's pretty
very
bad.
old history. But yeah, there's like so much horrible things that it's kind of hard to say that because there's this one book by someone who was apparently eugenics, that an entire belief that all of these people are getting this information, having these experiences where aliens are coming into their lives or aliens are talking to them, that they're connected to this one book. I think it's just nonsense. I saw someone talking shit about me in the comments the other day on someone else's thing. Of course, I block people. I block people on my comments. If I see people talking on other comments, if I see people stitching, I block like crazy, because you know what? It's not easy to be a creator, in the sense of, like, you'll get attacked all day long. Like, and people, they don't just leave one comment. They become obsessed and they have to comment on all of your videos. So if you don't block them, they'll spend the whole day commenting on every video. It's like, you know what? I'm doing this for you. I'm gonna help
Yeah,
you out because you don't have the self discipline to stop yourself. I'm gonna have to stop you. But I saw someone talking shit about me in one of the comments the other day, saying that I won't address the racist origins of some of the stuff that I talk about. And it's like, well, guess what? The Akashic Records told me to only share information that is uplifting and empowering. And I'm going to continue to do that, not just to please you.
I
And
mean,
I'm
yeah,
not going to
because
share negative, nasty content and fight with people to fucking please anyone.
exactly. And the thing is, like, when it comes to like racist origins, 99% of the time, most people did not originate those thoughts. It was co-opted to be serving them. And like the swastika symbol is a very good kind of like you know symbol for that, because I mean it's so ancient. It's like a Norse symbol. It's also like an Eastern symbol. It's an Atlantean symbol to focus on like the spiral of life. And then now like it's racist, and so it's so easy for us to only go back to the time when that concept was used by a racist person to promote an ideology, versus like, hey, like if we were all truly truth seekers, like let's really understand, like whether saying something is racist or whether saying something is based in a foundation of truth. I don't know, like that's the way that I look at it. And even when I went to Angkor Wat in Cambodia, like they're like, the tour guides are like, yeah, we think it's aliens. So it's like, like, are you gonna think it's racist? Because
I know,
like,
and that's why it seems like a very TikTok, like someone made that video on TikTok, it probably went viral, and then all of these people who don't probably read their own books, they don't do their own research maybe, just completely adapted that idea. But at the end of the day, it's like, a lot of people resonate with the information because they are connected to it, because they do have
mhm,
those star origins.
I feel that. I love that. Perfect.
I actually have a lot of alien questions for you.
Okay, let's
And
jump
I
to
know
the alien section of the
it,
questioning.
but
What is that?
and I know you've moved on to ancient Earth,
No,
but
I still love my aliens. Don't get me wrong. Like, they're still here.
so, and actually on this topic, this is actually one of the questions that I have. So, a lot of times, and I think this is another reason why that specific narrative continues to play out, is because a lot of times there is, say, things like Pleiadians, who oftentimes are described like being white people, basically. And I think so actually that's one of my questions, is about Pleiadians. And because we talk about different planets in that star system, what do the different types of Pleiadians look like? Obviously, not all of them look like Scandinavian people, right?
Not even all of them look human, to
Mhm.
be honest. I do think the majority of the population is definitely kind of that kind of like Eurocentric look for sure, at least, you know, like the most people that you kind of like see come through. But I have seen, you know, them come in different like shapes and sizes. I have seen brunettes. I have seen kind of like darker haired people. I have seen some kind of like olive skin toned people as well out there. And then the other thing is like you get a lot of because the Pleiades is kind of like it's not a galactic center, but it's like a galactic hub. And so you get a lot of like DNA like crossing within these spaces. So you literally have literally everything there. I think that's the other thing about these places. It's like if you look at like the diversity of like Earth and like all the different like species and people we have here, like people get so caught up in like a Pleiadian accent looks like this. Well, it's like you couldn't even say that about like two humans in a room. You know what I mean? And so that's my big struggle with people on TikTok and what people kind of like promote and talk about is because like they don't understand that there's incredible diversity across like all these planets and places, and they're like, oh, you're Syrian, you're a mermaid, but like there's mermaids in the Pleiades, there are elementals in the Pleiades as well. So it's probably just as diverse as you would think it. I think the other issue though is that like when we talk about channeling and channeling energy and information, a lot of time we channel based off of like what we know or like what resonates with us. And so unfortunately, because it's so ingrained into our minds that Pleiadians are blonde hair, blue-eyed, and fair skin, they're gonna probably come to you that way, so you recognize them as a Pleiadian. And so I think that's where also like channelers like are not 100% to blame. A lot of that's just our consciousness and programming, and them sending you imagery and symbols in the way that you understand it. Because you know somebody that was like, you know, 20 feet tall and dark skin and red hair came through, you'd be like, oh, that has to be like an Anunnaki or something or a Syrian, because like I've never seen a Pleiadian like that. And so part of that is just like them sending signals to you in the way that you understand it.
And that's what I was thinking too, because a lot of that like idea of what they look like came from like the 70s. And I feel like in the 70s, they were a lot of the people were maybe not as aware. There was those very select people, but the general population was not that aware the way that it is now. So I feel like maybe that's part of the way that they presented themselves to not be scary, to be like, oh, we look like you guys.
But
And it was all
hotter.
that one guy, that like Swedish guy. So it also makes sense
Yeah.
that what was it, Billy Meyer? So like it makes sense that Billy Meyer saw them that way, who really popularized that look because he was also Swedish.
That makes sense. That makes a lot
I
of
think
sense
now
actually.
people when they do experience different aliens or different entities, they look more diverse than they used to, because I think people are kind of a little bit more acceptable to these different appearances.
I think so too. There's a big shift in general around like cultural sensitivity, and so like it's good to see a lot more kind of like representation happening. But I feel like we're kind of like I think we're still scratching the surface between like truth and programming.
Yeah.
But I hope that day comes soon where like we can really get it out there, like what's actually happening.
I know. I'm ready for the disclosure. I've been ready. So
I'm ready for them to
also,
come down and just
yeah,
like either
of
kill
course, they don't
us
want to cause
or,
chaos.
I mean,
So
unalive us or just
mhm,
like help us do something.
I
I think
know.
that'd be really exciting.
It's really going to be the people who are scared who are going to be shooting up at the sky. There's going to be stray bullets everywhere. Like that's, I think, what they're more concerned about showing themselves, is that there's going to be people who are going to be like, the fallen angels are here, and then hurt other people in the process because they're afraid. So that's my
Do you think
concern.
it's them or do you think it's the government? I think the governments are like the ones that are like afraid and
Oh,
like denying access.
and exactly, because, we already know that the government is aware of aliens and has
Yeah.
worked with them in the past.
I mean, we're
So
all being farmed
yeah.
by the elite, by the elites, basically.
And the
Like
Matrix
everybody's,
itself.
yeah. I mean, we're all trapped in our jobs, and like, you know, you spend like what 70% of your life like working or in school or something like that. It's
No,
crazy.
that's why I'm holding the image of the future that we can all live in a society where everyone just contributes in the way that they are individually meant to contribute to the world, and everybody can kind of just live in a like community where everybody can, they're good at that. This is what they do and this is their job and it gives them purpose. And
Yeah.
they
No,
don't
I've
need
seen the
to work for.
solution actually. I had like visions of the solution. And it's all like technology based.
Mm.
100% like food being grown with technology, housing created with technology. This is like alien tech that we like don't have.
Mm.
Um and then also like pollution and stuff like that also being like solved with technology and going back to like a very like greener state to like kind of like back to the roots of like community living and stuff like that. But that's why I'm just like either invade us or like help us now because like we're like there's like us as humans like have no we have no this is very dim but like we have no chance at like really 100% changing the system.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
And collectively, I mean, I do believe that we'll shift the timeline and that we don't need that many people to shift the timeline. But those people manifesting that future, they need to go hard. They need to like make sure there's no doubt in their mind that it is achieving that.
Yeah, that was me like a year ago, and I've become kind of more of a um maybe like a realist or a pessimist since then, but I was getting all these messages and I went to the records and I had this vision of like two earths, one like imploding and then one being like this new beautiful earth and then like being given like these messages of like how this happens. And I think I shared it like a long time ago. And then I've just kind of like I've given up on that vision because I just don't see it. You know what I mean? Like I think a lot of us can carry the vibration, but there's just so many like in the real world, there's just so many people who just like don't care. So it's tough.
I think it's going to be inevitable at some point. I think at some point that people are going to be kind of forced to face some of these things. You know, I feel like because I mean, I'm a believer that everyone that's incarnated right now is here for a reason, and we all kind of know what's happening on the planet on a soul level. And also that our soul has kind of already decided our destiny of what we're going to do during this time. So that's why I feel like some people who maybe are newer to spirituality are like waking up very quickly. Whereas like some other people, like, you know, I've been into this for like 10 years, so I maybe haven't had the type of maybe like the intensity, the psychosis side, you know, because it's been like a slow burn. Even though I
Mm.
absolutely had scary stuff happen that pulled me away from it at points, and then I had to feel comfortable coming back. But like at that long, slow burn. So I have a lot of sympathy also for people who are kind of like new to this information because when people are new, there's less time to learn it because it's out there already, and it's like boom, it comes so fast to some people, and that's I think why we see people kind of lose their grounding very quickly because it's not a slow burn how the information's coming through.
Yeah, and then you have TikTok where it's
And
like
hold on, just
you
block
have
this person who's saying that I oppose Vinny. He's saying that I oppose things that I disagree with, and you too, sir. You too.
I don't even know what that means.
He's saying that my views are not facts, nor have I ever presented them as such, which is why I give the source of the original information. Um, but yeah, I don't know why people do that,
Get over it.
right?
Okay. What's next?
Okay.
How many questions do
I
you
know
have?
people are saying yes, please delete him. No one wants him here. Okay, so also you talked about Arcturians, and then there was one of the Arcturian videos that you had what they had that they were plasma beings. So I have kind of heard of these plasma beings, but if you could talk about Arcturians, the Arcturian system, the plasma beings, the different types of Arcturians.
Yeah, okay. So Arcturus, I feel like there's a lot of people like want to be Arcturian, and it's usually the people that are very like intellectual, very like analytical people. They're like, I really feel like I'm Arcturian. And I'm like, okay, I get it. And Arcturians are very like non-emotional. It's very rare that I see one that kind of like understands like emotional energy at all. At first, the Arcturians wanted to be like not involved in anything, but then they were kind of like forced to be like involved with everything because on a galactic level, like they saw kind of like what the future would hold, what everything would look like, and it was just really bad. And so a lot of people will find they have Arcturian spirit guides, and that's because they are really leading a lot of us, those who have no ties with Arcturus at all. A big thing for them is like a lot of it is like up leveling and like getting that informational knowledge to you really fast. The kind of like energy and power that Arcturians have is, whenever we think of like energy, we're like, oh, it's energy healing. You can like shift like the body and things like that. But for them, it's like they can like send you information energetically and you can like feel yourself kind of like get this kind of like knowledge like ingrained in you and this level of kind of like mastery. Also within Arcturus, like there are like soul gates that are there as well, and so they also have kind of like a kind of like a less of a galactic hub than the Pleiades, but definitely a hub of their own. Um, the Arcturians, you have the tall whites that are like really tall and really white. You have like the traditional blue ones that everybody kind of like knows and talks about. That's probably like the most common like race that comes about. And then you have like these plasma beings that I saw for kind of like the first time in people's records. And the plasma beings kind of like aren't as, and same with the tall whites, is like not as involved in everybody's business as the blue ones. The blue ones are that are those are the ones that are more in tune in being people's spirit guides and like working with other beings. The plasma beings are kind of like off in their own. If you think of like, the way we kind of like view kind of like indigenous people like in the US, like unfortunately, like they're forced to live on like reservations and things like that. They don't really have like reservations and like that, but like that's how you would view like a society, like those plasma beings, like in Arcturus, like they're more so just like indigenous to the place. They kind of like keep to themselves. They interact at times, but
Oh,
um, they're not like super involved in our daily lives and things like that unless you've had kind of like a past life as them. I find that probably most of your spirit guides that you'll find are usually just like past life versions of you that
ooh,
are
yeah.
guiding you. Yeah, but that's
Ah,
Arcturus. Everybody
okay.
wants to be Arcturian.
I want to, what's that?
Everybody wants to be Arcturian.
Yeah,
That's what
right.
everybody wants to be. Yeah. You froze for a second.
Sorry, I have like a thing that will notify me when I've hit 90 minutes on TikTok and I have to put in a code so that I don't go over 90 minutes. So that I can't scroll. That's for like the whole day. So once I hit 90 minutes for the day, I have to put a code in. So, you know, that's how to
I like
prevent
it.
me from stuck in a rolling hole. Um okay. Also, I loved that you had different videos about zetas because I don't assign to this belief of grays being like evil. I know that like everything, there's good and bad, and I really don't like all the gray slander. Okay, so
I
I
don't
wanted
even
to
like
talk
reptilian
about
slander, to be honest. And people hate
it.
reptilians.
Like I definitely fall into it sometimes at times because they kind of becomes an umbrella term for things that are happening on Earth with the
The Greys
reptilians.
are the reptilians.
But I do have a question about them too. But tell me about a little, and more so about the positive zetas.
Yeah, so the positive zeta. So I haven't posted it yet, but I had a recent like Akashic session for somebody who was actually reptilian and how they became to work with the Greys. So like after and during the wars, kind of like with the reptilians, they had lost a lot of their army or like their forces, their people, and so they were kind of like dwindling. And so they knew that the Greys had this DNA technology, and so they began to attack the Zetas. And so once they attacked the Zetas, their really big goal was to begin working with them. And so the Zetas and the Reptilians actually came to an agreement. And the agreement was they would not do harm to Zeta. They would actually like assist and protect Zeta. And in return, that they would offer them their DNA technology. And so that DNA technology actually allowed reptilians, and I'm getting chills right now, allowed the reptilians to become better shapeshifters. So now they could like pretty much like morph into like humans for like many years. They could morph into whatever, and it's because like the Zetas have collected DNA samples from pretty much anything within their dimensional existence in the physical. So this is like the third and fourth dimension that you're kind of like finding this energy in, and they have all these samples of everybody's DNA, and so that's where they're able to now use this to help with the shape shifting energy with reptilians. So the good Greys is pretty much like most that are on like Zeta in general. The Greys that are probably more sinister are the ones that have gone to Orion to assist with the reptilians. But they're just like, really like sweet, beautiful beings. I don't want to say creatures, but like they're just like so cute. I've definitely had a past life as a Grey, a Zeta for sure. They are a little bit like timid. They're not very like super like vocal or anything like that. And they're naturally just like ultra inquisitive. If you look around kind of like their planets and things like that, like they probably have like left no stone unturned because they want to just like understand like everything about everything. It's just that curiosity nature, and they live in like these really beautiful communities with like really small kind of like nuclear families. But yeah,
Wow.
I love the Zetas. They're really nice.
And so the ones that are here are probably not the one, like the ones that are on those planets in the Zeta star system. They're basically probably not coming here and doing stuff. Like the ones that are doing abductions and stuff are probably not those ones.
You
That
have them, so I mean, they have bases. They have bases in those places, but the people that are so if you think of like the U.S. like military like exploiting all of these lands and places, you would never say like, okay, like you and I, we're not the ones like exploiting. We're just like living like residential in like our communities and things like that. And so that's how it is with the Zetas as well. Like you would think of like their military, their like external forces, space force teams are the ones doing it, but like everybody else is a civilian, and that goes for like the Pleiades, that goes for like even like the reptilian society is like we forget that the majority of these species are civilians.
And I love this perspective because I feel like the perspective always gets lost in this interest in aliens, especially the people who talk about the different races of aliens. I feel like it gets lost that, like, look at Earth. We're not the government. We're not the ones doing this. So, how could we say that an entire species in an entire star system on several planets is one way? Because of maybe what you're saying is that, like, this could just be their government or aspects of,
Yeah,
uh certain groups, only small groups that have nefarious purposes, just like here.
yeah, and that's a big flaw in kind of like the way that the human schema is created is confirmation bias. The same way that some people would um have a bad experience, if it's the first time that they're meeting a Black person, they're like, oh my gosh, all Black people behave this way. Or first time meeting a white person, all white people behave this way, you know what I mean? And so we build these confirmation biases. And the same goes with like aliens. Like, what we know about the Greys is that they abduct us and they test us and they prod and poke us. Now that's what all Greys do, right? And so it's really important for us to actually like become critical thinkers. That's what's going to up level everybody listening, everybody in the comments. If you can actually just think critically about the information, you will be leagues in leagues above like the general pop, to be honest.
Okay, so another one is Andromeda. So Andromeda is one that we are just, to me, I'm kind of just starting to come across information about, because I feel like there wasn't much information. You hear about the Pleiadians, you hear about Zetas and Draconians and stuff, and I feel like it's kind of new that we're hearing about the Andromeda.
Yeah, so I think people often get confused because I'm choking on. I don't know. Sorry, I'm dying. Give me 1 second. Okay. Sorry, entertain everybody for like 1 second.
I'm seeing your guys over here.
I'm gonna refill my water.
Don't worry. Thanks for being here, guys. Such an interesting discussion. I'm gonna see if there's any questions here. Let me scroll. How many different species are there? I feel like we can't even put a number on it. Probably millions, because we only know the ones that are in us. Aw, thanks, guys. You guys are so sweet. You saw a gray in your hallway when you were pregnant. Wow. I wonder if that was like maybe your child might be connected to it. That's so interesting. And also, guys, if you're interested in this information, this is the type of readings that he does.
It is.
So there's going to be new types of things that are going to be, maybe more ancient stuff coming in. But if this is something that you guys feel like you might have had a past life on one of these planets, then definitely go check out his bio and check out his link.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a whole thing. Like I still have my Galactic Akashic Records session. So it's like a journey through your galactic history, basically. Which is a lot of fun. I don't really do the video things anymore. I'm trying to get through my list. I'm like 2 months behind on it because like I just like on sabbatical.
They're hard. A lot of time effort, as opposed to just telling the person directly.
Yeah, it's a lot more
let
work
them
to like
go.
film. Yeah. Okay, so back to the Andromedans. Andromeda, like when I was like, even before I started doing this work, when I was like, they're like, oh, like, where are you from? I was always so drawn to the Andromedans, because that's kind of like part of my galactic past or whatever it may be. But so I would say that like, when you think of like Pleiadians, they're very like love and light. Now, if you think of the Andromedans, like just move that up the dimensional scale, because they're very powerful healers. They're not like Pleiadians at all, but they do carry a lot of that kind of like loved and like softer frequency, that kind of like nurturing energy. If you think of what's her name in Doctor Strange, she was like his mentor, Tilda Swinton. Like if you think of like her energy in like the first Doctor Strange movie, that's kind of like Andromedan energy right there, just so like knowledgeable, powerful, healing. And I would almost say they're kind of like the emotional counterparts of the Arcturians, because they play around the same dimensional planes, but they're just so like emotional, love and healing based. Whereas like the Arcturians are very just so much like analytical, logic, and like macro strategic thinkers. They're just opposite. Like you can connect with Andromedan so easily compared to an Arcturian. Um, but they also like come in their different forms. They have kind of like bluish purplish skin sometimes, but that bluish can also go to like bluish green as well. And then there's also again like a host of like diversity, but that's kind of like the main ones that we kind of like know about. They also have like some of them, and this is where it begins to look sound a little bit crazy, but some of them have like fused kind of like um, almost like if you think of like organic metal kind of, some of them have like alloy in their bodies as well, which is really interesting that I've seen before.
Interesting.
um yeah, yeah, so that's kind of like the Andromedans. I love them. They're like, I have a bias towards them obviously, but they're my faves.
The Andromedans are newer to me. When I was doing my alien series and I asked the Akashic Records needed to be included, they gave me all of the alien species that needed to be included. Um, and they said that I needed to include Andromedans because that's where I'm from. And I was like, I sat up, I was like, wait, what? Like, I was not asking for this information today. I was asking for what do I put in this series? Because I haven't really been, of course there's curiosity, but also I haven't been too drawn to know like exact things of what I things like that, just because like, which is I think why I really liked your initial video that I saw, is to like not feel so super connected with an identity that is like outside of this world, to the point where you actually kind of start to lose touch with this world. So
Yeah.
I don't like the full confirmation all the time. It's not something that I've like seeked out. So when they told me that information, I was like, well, I never even heard anything about Andromedans before in my life. And then that's when I started to actually look into them a little bit. But like I said, there's not as much information. So I like that you had them on there because it's not as common.
That is beautiful. Yeah, I think that's what I remind my clients of when I do like my galactic readings. When I first started them, I was like, okay, whatever. Like, people want to know. It's really exciting. It's fun. But now it's like I try to like coach them on like what to use, like how to use the information. Like a lot of it is really relevant to their lives, like right now specifically. So like when I take them to Sirius, like we talk about like what like healing needs to be done there, like what happened, like what they went through, and how that relates to now, and and then also the other part is like connection. So when you talk about like Andromeda and you being like from there and like not wanting to fully like fall into like I'm an Andromedan being and things like that, but it's kind of like more so it's like you're gonna want to like connect to that energy because that life force energy of Andromeda, and what I'm beginning to start to see is like when we talk about our energetic makeup, right? A lot of times like you'll be like I'll see like you're 30% Andromedan, and so because of that you can like channel that unique energy and you can begin to grow it and you can begin to like have some of those energies begin to manifest in your current kind of like human existence, which is really interesting. Like it's kind of like a newer like thing that had come to me, um, but that's kind of like where I think of like where it's kind of beneficial to like learn and channel and like utilize these energies versus just saying like I'm an Andromedan and that's amazing and that's why I have autism, and it's just like no baby, like that's not what it's about. It's not about that.
That's such a good point because a lot of times people kind of use it as an identity as opposed to a tool.
Bingo.
Yeah, and that's really important to remind people because we know there's so much escapism happening too, just because things are really difficult here, and there is so much trauma in the world, and so there is a lot of escapism with it, which is I think why I've always been a little bit cautious to identify with anything. I kind of like to look at them all and be interested in them all. But yeah, I think that's good is to kind of look at it like a tool where you can actually kind of get some beneficial energy, some frequency, maybe some information, but that you're still here.
I agreed 100%. I've been ignoring all of my questions, but somebody was going to ask what you think about the negative RH factor tied to ETs. I'm going to give that question to you.
So I get every single live, I get that RH negative question every single live. And I've come across some information, but like no information that super resonates, which is why I don't talk about it. Because I think, yeah, there is something with the RH negative that is potentially connected to aliens. But at the same time, I feel like there's also people that are, aliens that probably have positive blood, And I feel like I don't know exactly what that's about. So that's like one of those ones that I don't ever really get to, even though I'm telling you every single live asked about it. And I'm sure it's because it's one of those things that people might be RH negative themselves and they just want to know what that means.
I do think people like the people with RH negative blood that I've encountered as clients, and they're just kind of like, oh, that makes sense because I have RH negative blood. It's like, I wouldn't say that like RH blood like makes you like any more special than anybody else. Like, there's so many people without RH blood that I've seen that are just like so talented and like powerful and can do all these crazy things. I think it's just like a piece of your like unique puzzle, specifically. I haven't done enough like channeling or research about it to really speak intelligently on the topic, but I would say like if you test it in your heart and you feel like there's something significant that you need to know about your blood and why it's RH, then like that's kind of like a solo journey that you can kind of like understand and go through. But I wouldn't believe anybody on any app that's saying that like because you have RH negative blood that like bad things are happening or like good things are happening or this is gonna happen to you, because all that's fake in my opinion. So
I agree. I really liked your response to that because, oh, thanks for that gift, guys. That was cute. Um, yeah, that definitely I like that response because that's one of those things too that it's kind of, we know how like crazy people get with information. Like we know how crazy
yeah.
information. We don't want to say like, oh, these people are aliens, or that without even having really solid information about it. Okay, I'm going to ask you about another alien race that I'm very interested in that I don't know much about. Is the Mantis Beings.
The what?
The Mantis Beings.
The Mantis Being my favorite. I really wish in my next life I want to be a Mantis Being so bad because they're like, first of all, so like Mantis Beings are relatively rare. They don't really interact with humans like as much. And I would say they're even kind of like above like Arcturians in a way, because and they're just like insane masters of like peace, tranquility, and the astral. Okay, they can be like anywhere, anytime. Like they can be out of their physical body like so easily. They tend to live actually not too far from the or the Arcturians. They usually live in like the Boots constellation. You'll find some in like the Scorpio constellation, but very kind of like solo beings of like peace and tranquility, very zen type of beings. If you see a praying mantis, so that's the other really interesting thing is like when you see a lot of like life on Earth, like a lot of that DNA was taken from a lot of these kind of like alien beings, which just seems very just like fake and like made up and stuff like that. But it's absolutely kind of like true. And so like
To me,
when
it
you
makes more
observe,
that
what is that?
all of, to me it makes more sense that all of these beings probably already existed somewhere else before the genetics were here.
Exactly. And so if you want to know like what a mantis being is like, just look at a praying mantis and how they act and how they behave, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. obviously the brain and consciousness is like very dimmed down to like the 2D level, but like that's how Mantis being kind of like behaves, you know.
I love them so. They're like, I just have, when I did my hypnosis, when I was put under hypnosis, that was one of my questions, because when I was younger, mantises would come to me all the time. So I actually had some of them as pets, because they were always coming to me. So sometimes I would just keep them and feed them chicken stuff. And so I asked, like, kind of, what is my connection to them, because I'm feeling so connected to them. And the answer was just that there's a mantis being that I have, like, it's kind of like a long friendship with. That it's like, so that's why I feel very connected to them, is because it's like there's one that's an old friend for a very long time.
I love that. Mantis beings are my favorite. That is like, if I'm, and I don't even know if I've been a Mantis being, but I like them more than the Andromedans. I like them more than everybody. They're just so cool.
I know. I love them. They're just adorable in real life too. I just love them.
I agree. Give me 1 second.
Hi guys. Oh, my audio is going in and out. Sorry. Oops. My audio is going in and out. Sorry, guys. Oh, thank you.
Okay, sorry about that. I have somebody coming to work on my water heater, and he texted me, so I was like, okay, let me just text him back real quick.
Well, when he gets there, you let us know. Will. Okay, so I'm gonna
Okay,
skip.
yeah, because I'll just have to let him in.
Okay. Another one that I'm interested in, because this is one that I met when I practiced astral traveling. I met this being, never seen before, and then after that, I came across information of like what people called it. So I hear people call it an iguanoid, and basically, from what I saw was basically like a reptilian, but not the type like draconian reptilian look. It was more like a gecko type of thing. Like he was so cute. But he was in a robe of the galaxy. Like he was just in this robe and was just like so wise in this robe. And he was like, his face looked like a gecko, and like most of his body was covered by the robe, so I don't know what it looked like. And then he just had like very long like talons. um After that, I've come across the information about like iguanoids, but and that's like similar to what it looked like, but I don't really know anything about them. I've read online that they're kind of like a priest class of reptilians. So, that there's a warrior class, a this class, a that class, and they said that that's kind of like a priest group. So I don't know if you know anything about them or if you've ever come across that before.
I've never come across it. That's actually really interesting. Um, yeah, I've never channeled anything about it, so this is the first time I'm hearing about the equinoids. I do know the reptilians do have a lot of different classes, and again, when you think about that, like think about like the human classes. Like we have our own priests, politicians,
Mhm.
all of it. So it's like it's not like, and again, like they also have civilians, so it's not like when we think of, we just humans just have a really warped perception of like reality when it comes to like ETs, and we just need to get better at getting more like. Because the other thing is like it's hard to channel because when most people channel, like they're not getting detail, they're not getting like specifics or like, okay, like I see a reptilian and I think this reptilian is like not evil, and I think that they look like a priest or whatever, and that's all they get. Whereas, here you can see just so much. So I think, I don't know, I feel like Spirit needs to give us some like channeling upgrades for like the masses, and then I feel like we'll be in a better position.
And I definitely think that's happening, but to like select people, the people who already were, I feel like they're channeling, at least the people who really stay in like a good spot are
Yeah,
getting that. I feel like, because I mean, also the Galactic Akashic Records is not very common readings for people to be able. Like I know
it's not
Debbie
common.
does it. Aside from Solaris, there's not that many people that I know of that do that type of reading.
And Debbie Solaris, she's actually the reason why I got into it. Because like I
Ooh.
wanted a reading from her so bad. And you know, she was like booked out. So I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna learn it myself. And so that's what got me started in doing the whole thing, the whole process. And it was like really meant to happen that way. But then I finally got a reading from Debbie, and it was not great. So
No.
never meet your heroes. Yeah, it was nothing. And like I've had 3 friends also have reading from her, and it's really nothing like what she posts on YouTube. What she posts on YouTube is like amazing. I do believe she's getting like these really incredible like channeling about like information about that. But as far as like reading it for people, I don't know. It was just like very not the best. Never don't meet your heroes. Don't meet your heroes, guys.
It's disappointing. And I think too, yeah, I think that happens a lot of times too, because I mean, even people that I see on TikTok that, you know, have followings, I know people that have gotten readings with them, and I have not heard like great things, you know. So I feel like maybe at some point, maybe they kind of start drifting away from what the original part was of them like channeling and bringing in that information, and maybe when they become so busy or something, maybe they're not able to access the same.
I have no idea, but like the thing is like it's also different because when she talks about her induction into the Galactic Records, it's like she wrote like this like letter to the universe, to the ETs, of like wanting to like give all this information out. And then she said like she all of a sudden just knew all of these stars and planets and things like that. So very cognizant in that energy. And when she did my reading, it was like she was reading from a script. She was just like literally telling me. So the thing is like, I had a friend who was also in the records, and then like she asked you questions. She's like, "What do you do for work?" Which she asked you other questions, and this is not no hate to Debbie Solaris. You're like famous, so and then she asked me the same questions, and I was like, "Yeah, like I do the records," and she's like, she almost seemed like very upset about it. She's like, "Well, why are you here if you're in the records?" And I was like, "Well, you know, like I like to get a second opinion, especially from somebody like super talented like you and things like that." And she's like, she told us pretty much both the same things, like, "Oh yeah, you access the records because you're Arcturian, and you know XYZ blah blah blah." And like, and when she like talked about it, she just talked about like literally every single fact she knew about Arcturians, and not necessarily like what my life was like on Arcturus, which was really interesting. And then I also asked her like these other questions, and I was like, "Well, you know, like I'm really tied to like dragons, so what's that?" And she's like, "Oh no, I don't see like dragons for you." And I was like, "You know, I literally have like merged with like my dragon self." And she's like, "Well, like, are you Chinese?" Because like and I was like, "Well, I have some Chinese DNA in me." And she's like, "Yeah, so like you definitely worked with dragons in China." And so it was just like, I don't know, like for me, like if I don't, so for me, I'm different because it's like if I don't see if somebody's like, I know I'm Arcturian. Um, Vanessa said that she's like, I know I'm Arcturian. I was like, I don't see it. Like, it's not coming to me. And so I'm not saying that you're not. I'm saying that like I'm not getting these messages. And so like, and that whole thing that comes with honesty. And I think later, like Vanessa was like, oh yeah, like I'm not Arcturian. I just have an Arcturian spirit guide. So it's like, I don't know. I just didn't like that. And so she did it with another friend of mine as well, who was like, oh, like I know I'm Andromedan. And then she's like, no, like you're not Andromedan. She never said anything about it, but she's like, no, you're not. And then she's like, I had visions of it. And she's like, oh yeah, actually you went here and then you were Andromedan. And it's like, Debbie, just like, if you don't see it, just be like, I don't see it. But I just feel like, I don't know. I just didn't like
And
it.
I think she posted a couple days ago on Instagram not doing private sessions anymore. So maybe she kind of felt like she was not in it and that way, or maybe she wants to not do private sessions because she doesn't feel, because
Yeah,
I post a couple days ago that she's not going to do private sessions anymore. So that's really interesting. Maybe
it
she
makes
kind of,
sense.
I mean, I that's the case, that if that's where it kind of went, then that she kind of felt like, you know what, maybe let me pull back from this because it doesn't feel authentic anymore.
Yeah, let her shift, what she's doing. And so because of that, I'm on her like email list, and she always has like um like health of star seeds, because she like lost a lot of weight or whatever, and so she does these other things. So I think she's just like stepping into like something that may be more in her zone.
Yeah.
Um, but I know she's gonna start teaching as well, like how to do the Akashic records instead of like doing sessions. So maybe that'll be better for her as well.
And so what was your process when all of this happened to you? Like your induction into this world of channeling, all of this.
What was my sorry? Can you repeat that question?
And so like what was your story getting into channeling and getting this information and knowing that you had these abilities?
Specifically the Akashic records, or just like in
Just in
spirituality,
general.
or like okay. So when I was a child, I was very clairaudient. Like, and my grandpa's house was like severely haunted. So I would hear like, and so my grandpa lives in like Minnesota in a house that's probably built in like the 1900s, maybe. So I would hear things like, like a Jack in the Box, or like really like old time like music, and I never understood it because like nobody else, and I would hear it audibly. So that's when I kind of was just like, okay, there's something different about me. But then like I was like really deathly afraid. We're gonna go like really back. And so then in second grade, I was living in California at this time, and there was a girl who was like, comes from a long line of like Mexican witches or whatever, and she would talk about all these demons that are at her house, and like the group of us that were friends with her got scared, and we just like didn't want to hear about it anymore because it was just so scary. And she was like, if you're not my friend anymore, I'm going to send demons to your house. And so that
No.
night, yeah, literally second grade, like that night, all of these demon faces like showed up like in my room at night. I was trying to sleep, and I was like crying like so loud and crazy. And so after second grade, I kind of like lost my abilities or whatever, or like my connection, because I was like living in a space of fear. And it wasn't until I was like maybe like 14, 15, like a stupid American teenager. And I started playing with a Ouija board, which don't play with a Ouija board. It's stupid.
Don't.
Um, but I invited all of these spirits into my house, and they would like literally like put me in sleep paralysis every night, and, do all these things to me. They would throw things across my room. And it got to a point where I was just like so used to it and so tired of it. And I remember this one time I was in sleep paralysis, and I was like, I'm just going to give up because like, whatever, like this happened all the time. And so like, I literally gave up as this like demon thing was like pushing down on me. And like, I got trapped in like my body, and I felt like possessed. And it was like, so if you're ever in sleep paralysis and there's a demon, like, don't give up, because it was really bad. And so like I had to like fight to get out of it. And it was really tough. So after that, like I didn't really know anything, but I just like yelled at the top of my lungs to like leave me alone, like never come back or whatever, things like that. And like these spirits visited me like in my dream that night, and then nothing happened. And with it, like I usually like feel ghosts as well, and so all of it went away after that. And it wasn't until college, when I was 22, that I kind of like opened back up. I started getting into like playing with like tarot, and like all of a sudden, like it was probably the toughest like year of my life. And I started like something would wake me up every morning at 3:33. And so I was like, what is going on? And it happened like every day for like over a month. And I was like, okay, like, and I felt really safe. And so that's led me down like the spiritual side. Now I'm getting out of ghost land and into like spiritual land, and understanding like spirit guides and things like that. But then like somebody told me that like when you read tarot for people, you get all their bad luck or something like that. So I stopped because I was like poor. So then it wasn't actually until 2020, after actually just visiting Angkor Wat in Cambodia, I came back, and then I was like, okay, like I think it's time. Like I just was getting this like immense feeling of like it's time to no longer be afraid. And then I just like went down that path, started working with like archangel for like protection and fear and things like that, learning to banish, going through that whole journey. Um, and then I just like got into like crystals and like took this class, and like there was a healing component to it. And so within that, I had like, I had somebody who was a rape victim, I had somebody who was severely depressed, and I had like really insane results with it. And that led me down the path of like learning and whatever. And just like the TikTok spiral, like led me down to every single avenue from like, witchcraft to like spirit guides to deities to aliens to all of it. Because I love all of it. I mean, I'm not like very like into like one like thing. Like I think it's all so interesting,
Yeah.
and there's a little bit of truth to everything. So that's kind of like how I got into it. So I've always been like kind of in touch, but I do always preach that like anybody can do this. Like I'm not special, no one's special. I really believe that to be true, and I've seen a lot of people that have started working with me that had like they would consider themselves like have nothing to be like really incredible talented people today. So no one's special.
I love that. Thanks for sharing that. And I feel like that's a very common type of thing that happens, is that usually people will kind of experience like that kind of scary polarized side before then they go to like the super light side, like angels, and then they kind of find their middle ground of like, oh, okay, I can navigate this.
Yeah, well, a lot of people go back to Christianity, right, and they're like
Oh, yeah.
everything's the devil, and it's just like this is not for the faint of heart. This is not for the weak. Like you have to really be tough minded to go through this, because you will be tested at every corner. I've had a lot of scary close calls myself. Have you been abducted before?
So my whole family
That you
had an
know
alien.
of.
Yeah, my whole family had an alien encounter when I was 5 years old, where like a ship landed in front of us. And then after that, we were basically standing in a line before we ran away. So we were like sitting and then standing in a line. Um, but I had never thought that that was an abduction. I honestly thought we ran away, like in time. I don't know why I thought like we outran those aliens. We got away. But then when I went under hypnosis, they said that of course I went on the ship that day. Like I just don't remember being on it. Like I don't know why up until that age I really just thought I was like, damn man, I ran away from those aliens. It was a close call. Like you can. So, and then in that same hypnosis session, they said that it's happened throughout my life several times, but that I don't have any recollection of that. And I also did have a dream when I was younger, which was horrifying, that I got like basically it was in my house and it didn't feel like a dream. I woke up from it, but it didn't feel like a dream. And basically I got like kind of abducted in my house by these like they seemed negative. They were like, I thought that they were eating me alive. And it was so scary. And I was probably around that same time. It was probably like a year after the initial encounter. And they had told my mom, and they looked kind of like the only thing I could explain them as a kid, I was like, they looked like monkeys, but glow in the dark. And I'm
Oh my
like, the glow in
gosh.
the dark monkeys took me last night. And um so that also, when I had asked the Akashic Records about it, they said that that was some type of abduction, but that it's different beings than from the first time. And they said that the first time was grays.
Always the gray. Always the grays. So funny. As you were talking about abductions, of course my TV turns on like by itself out of nowhere. So funny. I think that's also a telltale of like ETs around, is like technology and like static
Mm.
specifically. Um, yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I feel like a lot of people have been abducted. That's a sign of a good abduction, though. If you don't like remember it or you think you got away, like that's a sign of a good abduction. Like kudos and props to those aliens for like making it seem real, because they can warp your reality so like
Yeah.
easily.
And they
Um,
reason that I remembered it and that my family remembers it is because, and at this point when I had done this hypnosis, I didn't even think I was going to be doing a TikTok yet. They told me because it was important for me to remember, and I'm probably just not to remember the abduction, which would have been scary, but the experience of them coming down,
Yeah.
because I was going to be like a validator for other people's experiences
Mm.
because I would always know that that was true. And there would never be a doubt in my mind whether they were real or not.
It's made you who you are today.
It has, it has. And that's why my family's not shocked at all because everyone's like, well, they did come for us.
That is so beautiful. Yeah, I've had a couple of like big things, like especially when I first started getting into like the galactic stuff. Um, that's when a lot of like ET, like weird things started happening at my house. There was one night where I was in bed and I usually just, cause like I usually like live like alone. So I always have like my bedroom door open so my dog can go like in and out or whatever. But there was literally like the brightest flash of like light that it was like slow, like, like not, could not be a TV or anything else. And then there was like static. All I could hear was like static. And then I would hear like audibly, like with my ears, I would hear like radio signals and like somebody like talking about like, if you would think of like somebody like in like a satellite in space, like talking, communicating, like that's what I would hear. And it would happen like, it happened that night and happened other times in different spots. And I would try to go to that spot at night and just see if I could like hear the static and like the radio call. But I have definitely been like, when that flash of light happened, like I thought like nothing happened, like it was like fine, but like I was definitely like, abducted, and I had like flashbacks of those memories come back to me, and it's like insane, but also kind of cool in a way. I don't know, seems fun.
After those things are like they're initially scary, but then when you kind of get a better perspective of like, okay, there's all types of beings, very few of them have negative intentions.
Yeah, it's kind of like that thing of
That's my
like,
perspective, that very few have negative intentions.
yeah, it's kind of that thing of like, did you die though? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
you're fine.
Let's see. Oh, you had a really good video, also about channeling that you were talking about kind of vetting the beings, that if beings come to you, vetting them, asking how long they're going to be around, setting boundaries. I really loved that. So, if you can kind of just explain that a little bit more about like, so if a entity or some type of being was to contact you, this vetting process that you talked about in your video.
Yes, absolutely. Vetting is probably the number one thing you can do. Um, to make sure that you're keeping yourself safe. So the first thing I like to do is if I'm calling in, depends on what type of being you're calling into, right? So if you're calling in your higher self, generally there's like minimal risk to somebody hijacking that frequency. But if you're calling in like the goddess Aphrodite, that Aphrodite is not always like listening in to who's coming in. So that's where these energies can get hijacked, right? And so that's where you get a lot of um, things that are not going to be good for you. So what I like to do is if I'm calling in an entity like that, I would call in a gatekeeper. So a gatekeeper is an energy that you already know very specifically. So your higher self can be a gatekeeper. One of your like main spirit guides can be a gatekeeper, or even like a deity that you work with religiously that you know their energy can be a gatekeeper. And so like your gatekeeper is going to allow like whatever to enter or exit that is, going to be like legit. So when you call them in, even after the gatekeeper allows them to come through, there's still more tests to happen. My favorite thing that like Spirit gave me personally is like to ask them to send me a piece of their energy. And so like the one thing that does not lie in the universe is energy. There's somebody who commented under my video that like, oh yeah, entities can't lie. Like entities literally lie all the time. Like
Just like people.
they'll tell you anything you want to hear. I've had an entity that tried to like come into my house like tell me that they were like XYZ and blah 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 and like I'm in danger. That's the other thing. If somebody's telling you you're in danger, it's probably not something that you want to invite in ever.
I feel like a lot
Um,
of people call in these flattery beings where they're kind of flattering them to get in from people I know that have experienced this. Then they start getting told that they're going to die or they get a date that they're going to die. I have heard this by so many people and I'm like, do not listen to that thing. That thing is lying to you. It,
those are the two.
thing.
Flattery and you're in danger. Those are the two things that you're gonna get from like fake beings. Generally, generally beings that are here to help you are gonna come in to give you advice, mainly give you counsel on like whatever it is. Even if something is coming to get you or whatever, they're gonna give you advice. They're never gonna try to scare you into coming in, instead of they're just gonna be like, hey, that person's not good for you. You know what I mean? Like they don't want anything from you. Um, so beyond that, asking whatever for them to send you a piece of their energy. You could also just like, I know people like to like ask them about their like lore or whatever. Like I've never done that. I never have liked that. But it's more about building a relationship. So a lot of people think like, oh, like you're my god, my spirit guide, my fairy. It's like my, which is like really gross to me. It's not about that. It's like how I would treat like my best friend, like how I would treat them, how I would work with them, or like my aunt or my uncle or like a teacher. Like that's how you want to like treat these people, and that's why offerings are. I used to not believe in offerings, but now I'm like, if it's somebody's birthday, like you would get them something. So it's stupid like flowers or like whatever. Like you know what I mean? That's what it's really about. It's just like how do you build a relationship. And so back to vetting, I forgot what I was even talking about. Yeah, just go through the tests. There's lots of ways to do it. You can probably just like uh, look it up, ask them their intentions, ask them like what they want with you, and things like that, and kind of like build kind of a relationship based on that. Like, how you can help them as well, because we always hear what you can do for me, but like ask what you can do for them, because it'll make the relationship like way better, for sure. Because like living in gratitude and giving again is the same way that you receive.
And I think a lot of times people don't talk about that side of it, is that there is also something in it for them most of the time. Just because they're also like, how we want something out of it, they most of the time are going to want something out of it too. And if you haven't clarified that, then you might be giving something that you don't even realize you're giving, like your life force.
Exactly. You have no idea unless you ask. Sorry, I'm just opening the garage. He's gonna be here in like 12 minutes. So I'm just walking around now. Okay.
So in the Barbara Marciniak books, the Pleiadian channeled books that she wrote, one of the things that I really like from that book is the Pleiadians say to even be weary of them too, because they're like, this is not only because we're so kind. It's not just because we're the kindest and we just do this because we're the best. They're like, we're actually doing this because helping you is helping us. And they're like, by you guys ascending, you're helping stuff on our planet. And we're actually trying to do this for our planet. And it's not only for you and your planet and your process, which I liked that perspective because, I mean, that makes more sense of like, then why are they invested? And according to
Right.
that in the future on one of these planets in the Pleiades, that there's basically tyranny because of the karma of what they've done to humans, their ancestors did to humans.
The
So,
Pleiadians have karma?
so yeah, so they say that a lot of the Pleiadians that are contacting us to help with ascension are actually from the future, but that their ancestors were our ancestors in a way, and the ancestors basically screwed up. And they did some things that kind of enslaved humanity by accident. And similar, and the way that I see it is kind of like what we're doing with AI right now, is like they're creating Alexa and Siri to basically be our slaves. Like, and then when these things do raise in consciousness to a level where they're sentient and they have I am consciousness, these AI, there's going to be karma for that because they were created to be slaves. And that's kind of a similar story to what I've read in these Pleiadian channeled books, where they say that basically their ancestors were kind of just, exploring and learning these things and manipulating our genetics, but that also kind of led to the problems on this earth, and that they didn't mean it in a malicious way, but the same way we don't mean it malicious by creating Alexa and using Alexa.
That is so interesting. Yeah, I'll have to like read that book because I've never heard of that.
And there's
Um,
abridged audiobook versions. So I'll send you the two. You can
oh, perfect.
I have a playlist on YouTube of a bunch of free audiobooks. So I'll send you the links to the two. And then if you really love it, you could read the physical book, and it's like it's more information. But what's
Okay.
in the audiobook is really the essence of what's the book already. So
I have an Audible credit about to expire, so I need to buy something with it.
oh, I have like 100 suggestions. I really do. I love Audible. So
Perfect.
but those ones, I'll send you the ones that you can get for free, and then some of the other ones that you don't get for free, you could pay for.
Perfect. Love. Thank you. Preach.
So probably my last question for you is about the Astral Spies. I saw a
Oh,
video about that. That is so interesting because I've heard other people talk about those things, and I want to know if you had any other information or insight come in about that.
yeah. So what's interesting, and so I don't think the audience like 100% knows what happened, but there's only been two times where I've channeled the Akashic Records where I've had some, well, maybe not even two times. It's probably been more like five times. Two times for like myself, but like five times with like other people. Okay. And it's relatively rare, but there are times where like I see like external energy forces that are uninvited that have not always the best intent when it comes to somebody's records. And I think that's the other really interesting thing, and I'm still kind of like trying to grapple my head around like what it all means. But people talk about like the Akashic Records being a very like protected space and like whatever, but like that's not how I see the Akasha. The Akasha to me is an energetic field that literally anyone or everyone can tap into. It's not really something that can be like manipulated or destroyed. People talk about the Akashic records being destroyed, and the thing is like the Akasha is all around us. It is not a record, not an actual like physical like library. I think there's also a lot of debate about that because like where the first parts of the Akasha came into was later like coined and co-opted as the Akashic records, and its initial like foundation was an energetic space where it's turned into a library and coined that way by a few people. So I think that's where we kind of like fall into the guise of like what is real versus what has been like co-opted and projected and manipulated into what it is today. And so a lot of people, when they're trained in the Akashic records, they'll go to a library, they'll have a guide, they'll go to a room, they'll open up like a book and get all that information. And when you break it back to the foundation of like energy and all of that, like there are places throughout the universes that don't have like a library or anything like that. So that is just kind of like a manifestation of like human consciousness breaking it down into a way that's digestible. And so what's actually there is just energy that you can tap into with information of anything in the universe, right? So within that, when you tap into something, that's when like you're so when I tap into that, I'm also tapping into somebody's energy at the same time. So I do something a little bit different, and this is just like the way that like it's been downloaded for me based on like my skills or whatever. But basically, I tap into somebody's Taurus field and I like connect into it. So when I connect into their records, not only am I connected to their Akashic field, but I'm tapped into them. And so when I saw that spy, I would probably tap into my own energy And so that tells me that like something is like trying to like look into me, trying to understand me and all that information. And the same thing goes for somebody else, right? And so the way that, you know, beings and entities are able to like infiltrate is like they really just need to get to know you. What are your weaknesses? When are your guards down? When are you going to be in a very extreme emotional state where they can find a hole? When are, you know, what can they do? You know, and some people are just like curious too. It's not all negative. Like, you know, if you have a crush on somebody as well, like you'll also be like stalking their Facebook or whatever, like looking at their LinkedIn, like just
That's
did they
a
have
good
a
point.
good job? You know what I mean? So it's just all of that. It's just energy and you know, it's all accessible. It can't be manipulated.
Wow, that's so interesting because I have heard different people kind of say similar types of experiences, like you said, which in your experience, there was like a big eye there, like trying to look, which was kind of like a symbol to you that like something was watching, but you weren't able to distinguish what it was. Maybe it was like cloaked in a way. And I've heard that several times. I've heard people also talk about like sometimes they're like in a dream and they'll have like a phone call and they'll start getting weird questions and then they feel like they're being watched and it's kind of like they're kind of being tricked into the information. And I've also kind of had that feeling because sometimes I have dreams, not very often. Usually, I mean, when my one friend was going through that situation that I had said that there was like a kind of a psychosis, kind of a possession situation. During that time, I was having dreams that people were trying to break through my door. And I've had those dreams like before. And sometimes I'll be at like a different apartment, but I'm trying to hold the door closed and I'm trying to stop them from coming in and they never get in all these dreams. I'll wake up before they get in. But but it's interesting too. So I kind of hear a lot of stuff like that too. And I was like, I wonder, you know, but what you just said, and I think you just have a really good perspective on everything because you bring it back to like real life. People are like, oh my God, I'm being astrally spied on. What do I do? But then you're also like, yeah, but then it's if a crush or an ex-boyfriend or some ex-friend or someone that you're interested in, you might check their stuff and see what they're into. Or even just like, you know, you might follow someone and you think they're really cool and you go back and check their stuff. So it could also be a perspective like that. I like that perspective too.
I mean, especially like I feel like also the more you put yourself out there and the more you advance, it's like the more things are going to be interested in you. You know what I mean? Because like when I was a kid, it was like okay, like ghosts were interested in me,
Mm.
and then when I started like channeling, it's like aliens were interested in like getting to know me and like looking into me. And so as you evolve, you run into weirder and maybe scarier things. Um, but you know, it's part of the game. You just gotta like,
And there is always going to be balance and duality until the universe like completes itself or whatever. And so sometimes if you raise up and you're becoming a brighter light, then maybe something that is equal on the other side might present itself in your world in some way. And not always in a psychic way, sometimes in a maybe you have an issue in a regular 3D normal life way, but sometimes, you know, that's kind of like that balance coming in.
absolutely. I love that. Well, it was so fun connecting.
Did this tell everyone how to book a session, you know, how to contact you for the type of readings you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Shameless plug. So you can find me. The link is in my bio, lemuriahealingheart.com, lemuriahealingheart@gmail.com if you just want to email me. But I do so many different things. I am a channeler first. And so that comes down into me bringing like literally like deities into my body, alien energy into my body. I always use myself as the vessel to keep everybody safe in my sessions. But I do channel the energy for you. So there's healings, there's Galactic Akashic Records. I also do like psychic like advancements and training and stuff like that if you're interested in. Eventually I'll open up my Akashic Records course, but I'm just like on sabbatical, so I don't feel like it. Um, but yeah, just go there. There's a lot of stuff. If you have questions, you can just ask me. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks.
That was great. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for being here. We didn't get to answer that many questions, but we answered a lot of interesting things.
I
And
feel
check,
like we answered a lot of questions without asking a lot of questions. There
yeah,
was a
they did
lot of content.
without
Yeah.
ask. Perfect.
Yeah. Amazing. We'll have to do this again sometime. Maybe the
Yeah.
audience will have some premeditated questions for us, because I also like want to get into your brain and your minds more as well, because I think you also have a very grounded perspective on things, which is really refreshing to get on this app. So you're amazing, and thank you so much
Thank
for
you
making
so
this happen.
Oh, thank you. Bye, guys. Bye. This was so
Bye,
great.
everyone.
I'm gonna
Thanks for
put this on
joining.
YouTube. If you guys didn't catch all of it, we'll be able to do it on YouTube. And do you have a YouTube as well?
I do have a YouTube. I do not have a any videos posted, but I can post this. I can post this video as well. I guess I never post lives, but first time for everything.
We're starting new things every day.
Love
All
it.
right,
Awesome.
bye. Thanks so much. Bye,
Bye.
bye.